another unfortunate that we've been waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI, Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Jeff Nerfherder Chandler, Jim Kaiju Baker, and Christina Yojimbo Henry. You can continue. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
I thought we'd do Dawn of the Dead first. I was actually surprised that you didn't text us an hour ago and say, "Can we start now?"
Can we start early?
Yeah, I do have dinner reservations at 4:00, so let's not take too long. So because this is a 5-bucket episode, we're just going to skip news and we're going to skip the confessional.
Yes.
Isn't that normally the
sometimes
format?
we have an unbeknownst 5-bucket episode that.
Well, that's unbeknownst.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know going in where we all stand on this. I'm going to say right now, this is Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter all wrapped up in one for Jim.
Yes, it is.
So
yes, it is.
I am going to just sit back and let you go.
I really hope that I do it justice and I don't,
How can you?
Or I should have said that. I should have said that. I should have said that. But we'll see.
Whatever.
See how it goes.
So, anyways,
because I was gonna rewatch some commentaries and stuff, and then I was like, "Why am I bothering? Jim already knows everything about this movie."
Well, that's the thing. I didn't even make any "did you know" comments because I said there's nothing I can bring to the table that Jim does not already know.
That box set that we both have, I watched every minute of that box set in the past week. So
see, I did not have that kind of time. I was like, "Oh, I'll watch the original theatrical cut, and then." I thought if I had time that I would watch the Savini Romero commentary, and I didn't have time, but I did watch one of the documentary. I didn't have a ton of time this week to watch a lot of stuff. So,
well, Jim saved my butt because my library copy was pretty crappy. I think it went from the priest in the basement right to the helicopter scene.
You horror fans, it's public property. Please treat your DVDs with respect.
And I tried to clean it. I said, "Oh, this is not going to end well." And Jim came to the rescue because you found me a 4K version on YouTube, and it was beautiful because you sent me the link on my phone. I just slinged it up onto my TV, and off I went.
Good,
it was beautiful.
Good.
I think that the DVD editions are actually pretty nice. I don't really think that they look garbagey. The prints obviously have been cleaned up.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't know how much a Blu-ray could improve on that. The way
I had no point of reference other than the fact that it was clean. There was no, there was no grain. There was no, the colors were nice and vibrant. The details were nice and sharp. So I don't even know if listeners know what we're talking about yet.
Well, I would hope so. Maybe there's something.
Listen, we do have listeners who just listen. I follow a fair amount of podcasts. I don't read the description of what the new episode is or what the title is. I just, new episode of Kryptonaut podcast drops on Monday. I'm going to listen to it.
Well, to Jeff's point, we are talking about Dawn of the Dead and the original Dawn of the Dead, George A. Romero. So if you are offended by the original and like the remake better, then you should not be listening to this podcast. Go somewhere else, please. We don't want your business here.
Wow. That's harsh.
But to just to carry on the thought from a little bit before, I think that DVDs that were mastered in the 90s and the early 2000s, before Blu-ray really took off, actually look better than the DVDs that you see now, because I don't think there's as much of an effort that's put into DVDs now that more people have Blu-rays.
Right.
So yeah, those earlier discs from that time period, I think look a lot better than DVDs do today.
And the interesting thing about the box set that you and I have it's called the Ultimate Edition, right? Which
Yes.
But
which
this is not like a Criterion or anything. It's Shout Factory.
no,
No.
it's Anchor Bay Entertainment actually. But the interesting thing about it is that when I met George Romero in 2000, I want to say 2001-ish, like 2001, he was here in Chicago. There was a George Romero Film Festival at it was the Art Institute Theater, which eventually became the Gene Siskel Theater, and they showed a bunch of his films, and George Romero was there. And during the Q&A after Night of the Living Dead, he was talking about all the various cuts of the film that had sort of been scattered to the four winds, and he was trying to track them down and pull them in and get all the different versions of the movie. And that, like, a couple of years later, this edition came out because he was trying to get all the different versions of the film. There's 3 different versions on this Ultimate Edition.
Yes, and they are all markedly different from each other. So if you watch each one back to back, it's this, obviously same plot. There's more dialogue in one version than the other. There's less dialogue in the European version, and that centers more on some gore. There's
like
more
his
gore
Blade
in
Runner?
that than the US version. So it's crazy. It's 3 completely different viewing experiences.
I'm
Those
assuming I saw the U.S. theatrical.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
I think that was labeled as the US.
I now that you're talking about this, I do remember that this came up in a previous conversation, but it didn't even come to me when I was watching.
Well, it makes sense. It's not like that. There's no reason for these different cuts to exist. It's the distribution. We'll get into that a little bit later.
Okay. Fair enough.
I just wanted to, again, this is my pick for 5 bucket. The 5 bucket category for me is it's in rarefied air. There should be only like a handful, like in my head, that are 5. But now a 5 bucket movie to me is a movie that you can get lost in, that you can live in, that each time you watch it, and this is so stupid. I was thinking of this. The first time I saw this, I was probably 12 or 13. Like if I'm going through a rough patch or I'm depressed, I'll put this on, and there's maybe 2 others that'll do the same thing for me. Like it'll make me forget what I'm going through, and it'll make me feel better. And so that's just one of the criteria I have for a 5 bucket movie. But I also tend to get lost in this and a few other movies. Like I will lose myself in the world of this movie, so much so that as the plot goes on, but maybe he won't go back and get the bag from the truck this time.
I can't make fun of it at all. Oh, geez. There goes all my notes.
It's a complete experience every single time that I watch this. And it's almost, but not quite like the first time. And it just holds up again and again and again and again. And I never get tired of it. I also don't overdo it. I try not to watch it like more than once every couple
I
years.
agree with you on that. That's Star Wars for me.
Yeah.
I'll go years without watching it.
So just a little bit of background as to what my history is with this movie. My father was a big fan of Night of the Living Dead, and I didn't see that either until I was 12 or 13 years old, at the advent of home video. And that's what really, the horror films came in waves to me once home video boomed. But my dad used to go see these in the theater, and so he was aware of all this stuff. Dawn of the Dead was on his radar in 78, 79. It came out in the US in 79. He also was a member of a science fiction book club. And it was kind of like the Columbia House Record and Tape Club, where you'd get a CD every month. So he'd get a new book every month. And one of the books that he got was the novelization for Dawn of the Dead. And I still have it. So I grabbed that from him immediately. And I don't know why he did this, but every single book that he got from this book club, he threw out the outer sleeve. So all the books that he had from this club, and including the ones that I inherited, don't have the sleeve. And every time I look at it, I'm like, why did you do that? Why?
You're talking the dust
keep
jacket?
the sleeve, the dust jacket.
The dust jacket.
Yeah.
That usually had all the artwork on it.
Yeah. So my copy of Dawn of the Dead is just a plain brown cover with the embossed on the but I read that a few times over. So I was very familiar with the story by the time I actually saw it a few years later. It sounds stupid, but I always wanted to live in that world. I wanted to be stuck in that mall and live in that mall. And I think the reason being is because it's like a throwback. It's like a nostalgic throwback to the 70s, to my childhood. It's like a time capsule being stuck in that mall. So that's what one of the factors that drives me to watch it, that's makes that movie stick with me. And what has made it stick with me over the years is that nostalgia factor for that time period specifically, because it really is. It's not timeless. I can't call it timeless. It is stuck in its time, but it's in such a wonderful way that, and I don't know if somebody that didn't live through those times would really appreciate it as much as I do, but there you go. That's my kind of my history of it. So now, Christina, I know that you're a fan as well. Do you remember the first time that you saw it?
I don't know if I remember the first time. Like a lot of these kinds of movies, I don't remember not watching them. Do you know what I mean? Like you're just sort of like at some point it came onto your radar and then you saw it again for whatever reason, and then you saw it again. I didn't own it until after the big Ultimate Edition came out. But like I said earlier, I did get to meet George Romero, and he was unbelievably wonderful. And that thing that all the cast and all the crew always talk about when you watch these documentaries or listen to commentaries, they always talk about how kind he was, and that totally came through when you meet him. He was so warm, and he was so nice, and he was so appreciative of his fans, and it was like definitely rates as like one of the sort of the best like meeting experiences I've ever had in my life. Like it was really meaningful. And he was so cute too, because I didn't have something super special that I wanted him to sign that was like from him. I didn't really like the idea of people signing like video covers or like VHS tape boxes or whatever. So I had this book called The Death Dictionary, and it's just what it sounds like. It's like literally a dictionary of different terms related to death. And I thought, well, this would be fun. So I brought it and I had him sign it, and he was so excited to look at it. He was like, this book is so cool. And he was like flipping through it and talking to me about it. And his daughter's name is also Tina. And he was like, my daughter's name is Tina. And, he was just like wonderful to me. And it was such a nice way to meet him, because it was kind of before like conventions really became a thing, and this wasn't a convention situation. This was like a little film festival. And so there was sort of a limited amount of people there. The theater wasn't even full, for the showing of Night of the Living Dead. And you really got the feeling that it was like this little sort of cult of people who'd showed up just to meet George Romero. And it was really a nice thing. But I don't remember specifically seeing this film the first time. Just like I said, one of those things sort of on your radar. And of course, once you see it, you sort of become aware of Tom Savini. Like when you see his credit, I think, in other films, because I think I actually saw Friday the 13th before I saw this. But I didn't really notice the makeup artist for Friday the 13th. But for this, you do,
Yeah. And it's amazing to me going through the bonus material that this was his first feature film. That it wasn't like he was a respected, known guy that you would think he was from looking at what he accomplished in this movie. But no, and the funny thing, another little tidbit is that George was originally going to use him for Night of the Living Dead, but he got drafted.
Yeah.
So he didn't do the makeup for Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
But then he says that because of his war experience and seeing like the real wounded of war, that informs his work.
Wow. Oofa.
Well, he was a combat photographer. So, and I've seen things with him where he's talked about how being a combat photographer helped him, because he literally had the distance between him, from what he was looking at, because he had the lens between him and the stuff he was looking at. And that sometimes to literally sort of protect himself, protect his brain, he would just pretend it was makeup, he would pretend it was fake. So, but yeah, it obviously, the extreme gore of Dawn of the Dead distinguishes it so strongly from Night of the Living Dead. Night of the Living Dead is gory, but it's nothing on the level of Dawn of the Dead.
Right.
And I think Night of the Living Dead was scarier though.
Oh yeah,
than this.
definitely.
I think
I consider this more of an action.
action. Yeah, I would lean it. Yeah.
It has definite horror elements.
Oh yeah.
And it has bizarre elements as well. But on the whole, like George Romero himself calls it a comic book movie. And I would agree with him.
And the famous New York Times review from Janet Maslin, which I hope.
Oh, I read this. I read this before, just before we started recording. Yeah.
Yeah, and I hope that we'll read some quotes from it later because even though she doesn't think very much of the film, it's some quite good writing. I think she has some
but thankfully it's like a blurb. It's not an actual review, because if she walked out the first 15 minutes, I think I would be really offended if she tried to write a 2-page piece on something.
Right. But to that point, she walked out in the first 15 minutes, but that's because the first 15 minutes of this movie is very extreme. If you can't get through the first 15 minutes, then you're probably not going to get through the rest of the movie, which by comparison, until you get to like the last 25 or so minutes, is relatively tame compared to the first 15 minutes.
Yes.
Well, I will say that I thought the first 15 minutes were brilliant. I thought it just opens up and it's just, I mean, you're sucked right into this world. And I thought it was like super intense. And I was just like, this is cool because, you know, you guys talk about your experience. My experience watching this movie goes back to Tuesday.
But quite a lot of the cast, even when they saw some of the makeup and some of the things that they were doing in the initial sequence, were like, this is disgusting. Like, how can you think you can get away with it?
I did not think it was that gory.
You don't think the zombies eating other
you know
zombies?
why? Because I'm coming in on the back end. So, I've been exposed to 28 Days Later, the bastardized running zombies, World War Z with, their saliva coming out of their, you know what I'm saying? With The Walking Dead, where, they're living carcasses. This is not to that level. And I'm sure at the time, this was phenomenal makeup and special effects, and no one had ever seen anything like that. Because like I said, we watched Night of the Living Dead for this podcast, and I do remember watching it, but watching it with a critical eye, that's a scary ass movie. And it does have gory elements of them eating the raw flesh and whatever. This is much more what Jim said. It is much more of a cartoon, comic booky action movie for me.
And to that point where you didn't think it was that gory, it is really relative to the time it came out, because like you said, nothing quite like it in terms of
right. And now movies go over the top, and that's the stuff I don't like. So I felt that this was very tame compared to some of the things.
But the funny thing is that in the 80s, that I remember seeing this in the late 80s, it popped up on places like the USA Network, and I watched it. I remember on the USA Network, and very little was cut out. The beginning moments, though, some of those scenes were cut out, but like the end, where the zombies start chomping down on the motorcycle gang, that was pretty much intact. And that was, I thought to myself, how crazy. They had so many troubles getting this released because of the ratings board, and now it's on the USA Network.
And now it's on USA Network. Yeah. Well, like you said, it's a product of its time. But
so let's get into it.
Let's get into it. Yeah.
So this is another thing that I like about this. While it is a continuation of Night of the Living Dead, it's not like a direct sequel. It takes place, and it's the Night of the Living Dead obviously is a product of the 60s.
60s, yeah.
This is a product of the 70s. It's two different time periods, same story, but it doesn't necessarily have to make sense where it's chapter 1 and chapter 2.
No, correct. Right.
But the implication, I think, is certainly that like this is happening 5 minutes after the events of Night of the Living Dead.
Yes, and you're
even
supposed
though this
to
is a
just go
different
with
time period.
Sure, you're supposed to just go with it. Same thing with Day of the Dead, which comes out 8 years later. So we're introduced. So the problem that has been established in Night of the Living Dead is still going on. So Night of the Living Dead is only over the course of a night.
Right.
That's the title. So, and we're still very early days once this begins, where the TV stations are still operating, and that's where we meet Fran, the first of our four main characters, and I like to call them the Beatles of horror, these four actors. So we're introduced to Fran and Steven in a few minutes, because he also works for this TV station, and he is their weather pilot, and he pilots the helicopter, and that is their ticket out of here. So we see the madness going on in this TV station where everybody's losing it.
I loved it.
Everybody's walking out.
I think it was a brilliant way to start this movie off. You don't need any setup. I mean, you don't have to tell me what's going on. You're seeing
but
the chaos.
But you're
well, they are,
the,
but in a very frenetic. I'm not getting a spoon fed to me kind of a thing.
So if you didn't see Night of the Living Dead, you're getting the setup from this scene, because you're hearing what's being said, rescue stations, and these hilarious characters that are on the TV screen, the interviewer and this doctor who are arguing back and forth. And they're the ones that are giving you the plot, the exposition. If you don't know what's going on, they're going to tell you that the dead are returning to life.
Fake
and
news
so and
there,
so.
Mr. Vernon. Yep.
And, and it's a very familiar situation to what we see now. People don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear what the scientist has to say. And they're throwing things at him. The one guy with the rabbit ears behind his head and that gets pushed off. And then we get the reprehensible station manager who's telling Fran to put the rescue stations on that have been shut down. And one of my favorite lines is when the interviewer hears the station manager, it's like, "Get that idiot off the air." So with this, and we even see the security guard grab his jacket and leave the station at one point. So in this backdrop is where Steven comes in, who's the pilot, tells Fran that they're going to get out tonight. And then the camera operator that overhears them tells her it's all right. We got this. We got this. The emergency broadcast system is taken over at midnight anyway.
That's dedication to your job, by the way.
That is.
Because I would have been on that helicopter. I'd be like, this paycheck is not.
And they would have been like, well, who invited you? It's like,
I'm sorry, I overheard your conversation. I'm in. I'm your guy.
So the first 5 minutes were safe so far. But it's in the next sequence with the tenement project. We also get a little voiceover as to what's happening here in the TV station. They say, as they're transitioning from scene to scene, the bodies of the dead will be handled by special units of the National Guard. And boom, next scene, you see SWAT teams going into this project house. And you don't really know why they're doing it at first for the first time.
Yeah, it was a little confusing.
Viewer.
Right.
I did, because I read the book 10 times, so I knew exactly what they were doing.
I didn't. I actually wrote, I honestly don't know what the hell's going on.
Because people that I've shown this movie to for the first time always at this point ask me, what am I watching now? What are they, what's going on?
Yeah, because it is kind of an abrupt cut.
So they're going into this building because there are there are zombies in the basement.
Apartment. Yeah.
The people that live there, and as is stated a little bit later, like as we get to the close of the sequence, they still have respect for dying. They do not want to destroy the bodies of their loved ones. So they keep them in the basement. So the SWAT team are coming in to clean it out. So this is where we get the onslaught of gore effects. There's one scene where there's a racist SWAT team member, and I think his name is Wooly. He busts down a door, and without even looking who's in there, he shoots into it, and you see a zombie, the head explode. And that's number one scene right there, like where and then a little bit later on when you see the first bites is where you're getting that visceral reaction from people that couldn't take the movie.
And the disturbing thing about the racist SWAT guy is, I was like, this character is sort of disturbingly modern. You kind of hope that characters like this wouldn't be relevant anymore. And in the context of the movie, he's half the problem, because he creates all these dead bodies that weren't there before.
Right.
And he becomes one of them, thanks to Peter, who just comes on the scene like a giant among men, because he pushes everybody aside and he takes out Wooly. Then we get the famous bite scene. There's one zombie comes wandering out of the hallway, and then the wife or girlfriend sees him and tries to embrace him. The effects are so well done that it doesn't really take away once you know how they're done and you watch all these behind the scenes things. There's foam latex that the actor bites into, and then there's blood gushing with somebody with a pump like right below camera. But one of the stories is, I don't know if it was the shoulder bite or the arm bite, that the guy got a little too overzealous and actually
it actually bit the person.
The foam. So the scream was real in that scene.
All for the sake of art.
So as we were saying, yes, it is a comic book movie, and it is on the lighthearted side for most of it. There's a lot of funny stuff going on. There's a lot of social commentary, but done in a tongue-in-cheek kind of fashion. But we do get interludes like the end of this tenement sequence, where first you have the one-legged priest who they encounter. Roger and Peter meet each other in the basement of this tenement. They don't know each other at this point, but Roger recognizes him as the 6.5 foot tall person that just killed Wooly.
Right.
And he says, "Oh, I didn't see anything. So they bond a quick friendship there in the basement, and Roger offers Peter a ride on the helicopter. That he knows Fran and Stephen, and he offers Peter a ride. And then the priest comes in. One of the most powerful scenes, I think, in the film is the dialogue that this actor has, and a real amputee. You can, and with the budget that Romero had, you can't fake that. But he is a really good actor, and he delivers these lines very well. And the one line that always sticks with me is his final lines, where he says, "You're stronger than us, but soon I think they'll be stronger than you." And it turns out to be true. And he also lets them know that the bodies are in the basement, and that's where they can find them, and that they're willing to give them up at this point. And this is where we get a nightmarish scene covered in sheets, and this scene where Peter and Roger go in and start to clean house and take out the zombies. This scene, among the three versions, I think is the most different, because in the European version and in the director's cut, it goes on for a good 30 seconds more of just really disturbing imagery. So these kind of scenes kind of jerk you into a uneasy reality from the fun that you're having otherwise.
I think I just want to add at this point, I think Ken Foree has a very strong Dwayne Jones quality, which I think is probably why he was cast. Even like the content of his character is very similar to Ben in Night of the Living Dead. Like he's the can-do guy. He's the guy who's like, let's be practical, let's get this stuff done, let's take care of things, and let's not panic, because you never see him panic throughout.
No, he always knows exactly what to do. And it's like you can tell he's always working out in his head what needs to be done at any given moment. So every other character looks up to him, and the audience looks up to him as well, just like Ben, as you're saying, just like Ben. So then we get a scene with Fran and Stephen meeting Roger and Peter on the docks, and they're meeting to get into the helicopter and go. Now, in the theatrical version, which is what we all watched for this podcast, it just has Roger and Peter pulling up. They're gassing up the helicopter. They get in. They have a little bit of conversation with some other people that are also running, and then they go. But in the director's cut, that group is actually threaten Stephen and Fran before Peter and Roger get there. And so they're holding them both at gunpoint, and it's obvious that they're not police, but they're dressed up as police. And then when Roger and Peter show up, they show their guns, and they know that they're outmatched by these two SWAT guys. So then they immediately back off and they go their separate ways. Then we get probably the funniest scene in the movie is the next morning, the helicopter is going over a very rural part of Pennsylvania. So you see a lot of good old boys. I don't want to say rednecks, but that's basically what they are.
That was half of my family. Thank you very much. Because I could easily see them all jumping on board a zombie hunt.
And so with the National Guard, they're all having a great time, sharing laughs, shooting zombies. Somebody brought the coffee. So it's pretty much a continuation of the final scene of Night of the Living Dead with the
They're
posses.
just picking them off, in the fields.
And you even get that. I think it's a nod to Night when they blow up the car in the middle of the field, because you get a little musical flourish that's very similar to Night of the Living Dead once the car blows up. They stop at an airport. Then we get the poster zombie actually exists in the film. Yep. So that's what all the poster and the merchandising was based around, was this one gentleman with a shaved head, flannel shirt, and a very nice makeup job by Mr. Savini. And he approaches Peter in the airport lounge, which consists of an ancient candy bar machine.
Right.
You could get a milkshake bar for 15 cents off of that
There you go.
machine. Then, of course, Stephen and Fran encounter a couple of zombies, and Stephen deals with them in a very flailing and incompetent way.
Incompetent, I was gonna say.
I mean, I think that if it wasn't for the fact that Steven could fly a helicopter, he's useless. He should never hold a gun.
No.
Because every time he holds a gun, he's so inept. Especially the scene later in the mall when the bullets keep ricocheting off the pipes, but he keeps firing
he just keeps
anyway.
firing regardless. Yeah. I definitely have in my notes that he was an ass. I didn't. He was like you said, he was worthless. But back to that helicopter lounge or the airport, that was like the zombie kill of the week, with the top of the zombie head getting taken off by the blade.
With the blade.
I was like, oh, that was cool.
Yeah.
Because you didn't realize at first what happened. All you see is like the top of his head kind of like go, and then you're like, oh, he just walked into the blade.
Yeah.
But this also has, I think, one of the most disturbing scenes in the film, which is when Peter has to shoot the kids.
The zombie kids, yeah.
And that didn't make it into a lot of the cuts that, depending on the territory. Because as it was going through Europe, I guess that not only is there a European cut, but it's slightly different in each territory that it debuted in. And that scene didn't make it into or it made it in a very edited down version.
Well, we just talked about this last week with Sleepy Hollow, and he implied that he beheads the little kid, and it's all off scene, but this was like just straight on, you're killing a kid.
Yeah. But it's not like it's the defenseless kid, it is
but still it's a kid.
Yeah.
It's right, correct.
And I was worried because I remember the first time I saw it, it looks like Peter's bitten on the arm by one of the kids, but he can't break through the shirt to actually break the skin. So I think that even that little scene where you see the kid trying to bite him, I think probably Romero told the kid, okay, bite his arm. So it makes it look like there is a threat and that there's a reason for him to do what he did. But he was upset as well, Ken Foray, about doing that. But yeah, the helicopter scene, which comes a little bit later, when the zombie comes through, because they already had him made up, so he kind of looked like Frankenstein already.
Big top hat.
You're like, that looks, somebody that didn't know it was coming is like, what is the deal with this guy? It's like, because he's got a square head. But, obviously they put all the makeup effects so they could rip it off. And there was a moderator on one of the commentaries with George Romero and Tom Savini. And they asked him, how did you get this guy to stand so close to the blades?
It's got to be forced perspective.
But they said, no, the blades are animated.
Oh,
in there.
wow.
The blades aren't even going. They're animated. Yeah. So, but in that, not CGI animated, but in that old school on the cell kind of a way.
I'd have to go back and rewatch it again to even.
Yeah, I know the movie had gotten past that scene by a few seconds once he revealed that. But, next time I watch it, I'm going to be looking at those rotors to see if I can tell. Because that's amazing if that's the case. I watched it so many times, I've never picked up on that. It looks real to me. But what's funny is that you can almost tell that Romero is giving the audience time to either expel their emotions or laugh or do whatever, because Roger stands there with the pump in his hand and looks, almost like waiting for the audience to stop applauding so he can continue on with the scene. And I think Romero does that he doesn't want to lose any dialogue, right? So he's giving the audience enough time to process what they just saw and then continue on with the movie. So boom, next scene, they've gassed up and now we're in the movie proper. They find the mall. This is very interesting because the Monroeville Mall is what inspired Romero to even make a sequel to Night of the Living Dead. He knew the managing company that ran the Monroeville Mall. And I think it opened in 74, 75. It was one of the few at the time indoor shopping malls that were like this. And soon after the movie came out, they were everywhere. But one of the characters, I think it's Steven, says, "What is this place?" It's one of those indoor malls. And it's something very strange. Yeah. But Romero took a tour of the Monroeville Mall because he was friendly with this guy that was part of the management company. And not only did he take him around the stores, but he took him like to the engine room or whatever you want to call it, the behind the scenes where Steven is ricocheting the bullets. And he mentioned just offhand to Romero, yeah, if there ever was a national emergency, you could live here. There's enough hiding places back here. And the light bulb went off, and suddenly he had an idea to write the sequel to Night of the Living Dead. And they graciously allowed him use of the mall. He said if they didn't allow him use of the mall, he wouldn't have been able to, there would be no point in making the movie.
Well, it was funny because I can't remember if it was in the commentary or if it was in an interview, but Chris Romero, George Romero's wife at the time, said to him, because he was writing the script in Italy, because Dario Argento had called him up and said, let's make a sequel.
Coincidentally, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he thought about making the sequel, but it wasn't until Dario called him that he really had the impetus to actually get it done. Dario said, come over, and they set them up in an apartment in Rome, and George wrote this script, and he was writing the whole script around the mall, and he didn't have permission to use the mall yet. And Chris Romero was like, do you think you're MGM or something? Like, what are you going to do if the guy says we can't use the mall? And she was like, this movie's too big. But yeah, he ended up getting permission to shoot, but only at night. So they had like the worst working hours possible.
And, you can tell in the movie that they did not film this during the summertime. It is a complete autumn, winter kind of movies. Just like we were talking about last week, we have songs or records that mean a certain time of year to us. So I have the equivalent in movies with Dawn of the Dead. I have to watch it around this time of year. And so they started filming in November 1977. They had to take a break for Christmas because they didn't want it would ruin their continuity if they had Christmas decorations in the background. So they had to take a break for Christmas, and they resumed filming in January of 78. But what's crazy is even back then is that they didn't start Christmas decorations until December. Like now it's,
Christmas decorations are up
October
today.
1st.
Yeah.
Forget it. Yeah. I was amazed like how stark the mall really was. But you talk about, the fact that this is like this time capsule. But yeah, that was like the late 70s, early 80s. That was the advent of, the mall, the experience of the mall, of going to the mall. You could go to one place and just hang out there all day. Had everything you needed.
The one thing I didn't see that I was so looking for the first time I saw this was Orange Julius. There had to have been an Orange Julius somewhere in that mall.
Yeah.
Do you know what's interesting though to me about the makeup of the mall is that there's a bunch of things in the mall that you didn't see in most malls even a few years later. Like I've never been in a mall that had a gun store. Or, I'd never been in a mall that had a grocery attached to it until,
that was a little weird.
Like, very recently where you start to have like super Targets attached to malls or whatever, and they have groceries in them. But so this is really the perfect mall because it literally does have everything they need. It has food, there's guns, there's clothing,
But if you notice, there was an A&P across the parking lot.
Yeah, this was like I said, this was absolutely, Blade Runner, all these defunct companies that show A&P being one of them, J.C. Penney being another.
But they did fabricate the gun store. So that was a plot device that they had to put in there. But Romero, and he's right. He did say, a little bit later on, hey, they've got gun racks in Walmart. They've got
I was going to say Kmart. I don't think Sears ever carried guns, but
yeah, but nothing to the extent that store was. That was like an armory. That store.
Yeah, no, that was
And I think when they were shopping for food in that one scene, it made me think that there was a store, and Christina, you may remember this, in the South Hills Mall. Was it Pepperidge Farms or one of those places that sold cheese and
in the South Hills Mall there was a Pepperidge.
Wasn't a grocery store.
Was it Pepperidge Farm?
You get your summer sausage and cheese.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And
I forget the name of it.
But it was I know what you're talking about. But it was a small storefront. It wasn't like a big supermarket.
Right.
So, but it was definitely convenient that literally everything they needed was in this
was at their fingertips, as Roger says at one point. So they go about, I'm not sure where they were headed. They were headed north. And because as soon as they land at the mall, they just kind of land to take a break. Hickory Farms. That's
Hickory
it. Thank
Farms.
That's it.
Yep,
Yes.
there you go.
Hickory Farms, remembers.
No.
That's Pepperidge Farm.
That was Pepperidge Farm.
So they would just want to take a break at the mall. So they land on the roof, and they actually built a helicopter pad for
I was
this
gonna say, I'm
movie on the
not
mall.
really sure
Yeah.
you could actually land on the roof of a mall. But
So and they look down, and they see some zombies, and they're like, "Oh, we can get in there and get some stuff."
that was just Black Friday. They were
Yeah.
just regular people shopping.
Yep.
They weren't really zombies at all.
So they go in, and there's a room that's above the mall that didn't actually exist in the mall. That was in the offices of Laurel, which was the production company that Romero owned. But so they go into this little spare room that has some emergency supplies, Spam among them.
By the way, Spam comes with a key. You do not need a can opener to open a can of Spam.
He said that.
He said,
Oh,
that.
he does. Oh, I
Yeah.
missed. Wait, because I. Oh,
Because
okay, never
the
mind.
line
I cut
was-
that out because she said, "Do you have a can opener?"
Yeah.
I'm like, you don't need a can. Maybe I was yelling at the screen
Because
like,
the line goes,
She's contemptuous because it's Spam. And he says, "Do you have a can opener?" And she says, "No." And he said, "That's a good thing because Spam has a key." And it's basically like, don't be contemptuous of this
I
thing that we
missed
can
that.
actually
I
open.
jumped all over in
Yeah.
the minute.
See,
he
that
said,
was
"You have
one
a
of those
can
scenes.
opener."
Romero
Okay.
should have taken a pause after that to allow the audience to start
Yes.
yelling. And then,
Spam. Spam lovers unite. My wife refuses to let me buy Spam, but my grandmother used to make fried Spam sandwiches.
I don't think I've ever had Spam.
Oh, it
think I
is.
ever
It
have.
is. It is. Yeah. If a zombie apocalypse ever does happen, that will keep you alive. But you don't need to eat it until then.
You've never had Spam, Jim? Have you
Unless,
ever-
it's been made for me and I just don't know it was
Spam
Spam.
dip. My
Have
grandmother
you-
used to make Spam dip.
Have you ever been to Hawaii? Because
No.
it's incredibly popular in
Yeah.
Hawaii.
Is it?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's huge. Like, not only is it hugely popular, but like literally half of a grocery store aisle is like cans of Spam. It's not like here where there's like 3 cans on a shelf.
Right.
Right.
It's like it's hugely popular. And if you go to like Hawaiian food type restaurants, like places where they have plate lunch and stuff, they make Spam musubi, or like Spam as a side with your breakfast. Like Spam is hugely popular in Hawaii.
I'm gonna send you a can of Spam.
Hmm.
We're gonna eat it on air.
Is it just like when you say
It's
that there's an
potted meat.
entire thing of, is it just the same Spam or is there different variations?
varieties.
Of Spam?
Yeah,
Okay, there
varieties,
are.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of Spam. So yeah, if you ever go to Hawaii, get yourself some Spam musubi at least.
Well, hopefully I'll be there next year, Jim. I'll bring you some home.
Yep.
There you
So
go.
they're in this little apartment, for lack of a better word, and then it actually becomes an apartment a little bit later on. Roger and Peter realize that they can get some stuff downstairs while they're here and taking a break. And Stephen is sleeping. Not that he'd be much help to them anyway, but he's sleeping. Fran does not want them to go downstairs. She thinks they're crazy, but they don't listen to her, and they go right down anyway. Then they leave her a gun, though. They do leave her
Yeah.
a gun. They tell her
just
how
don't
to
let
use it.
just don't let Steve touch
Yeah.
it, Steven.
And you might hear some shooting, but just don't panic. So
Don't panic.
you probably will. You definitely will hear some shooting, but don't
Mhm.
panic. So they go downstairs and they go into the back offices first. They don't encounter the same zombie that Steven does, but they're in the same office. They grab keys. They turn on the escalators. They turn on the music. So the zombies start going up the escalator.
This is hysterical.
Don't
This
know
was
what's
just
going
like this
on,
was
yeah.
like such a whimsical like it just changes the tone
Right.
because
right.
now all of a sudden the zombies are like on escalators going, well, what the fuck is this all about? Excuse my French. So it was kind of funny.
Then you see the one zombie that's shot that's going up the escalator, and then they all trip
he's
over
laying
it
there and they
because
trip
once
over him, yeah.
once it goes up to the top, they come out into the mall, and they're in like a back hallway where there's a photo booth and there's phones. There's probably the restrooms are down there. The hallway that you see in every mall.
Yep,
That
yeah.
has it's a little splinter hallway.
That's always sketchy.
It is always sketchy. You don't know what's down there. You don't want to go in
No,
those restrooms.
No.
They sneak their way down and they look around the corner and they see a few zombies. They decide to go for it. They run to the J.C. Penney's. They manage to get the right key as they're they're
that
warding off
key
the
ring had
zombie.
2,000 keys.
It had 2,000 keys, but they're probably labeled, right? I don't think that they would have gone
I don't
there
know if
without.
you really had time to start reading all those
They
labels.
probably have about 3 or 4 that are labeled JCPenney, and they had to go
I
through
give
those
them credit
4,
that they
and,
were
yeah.
able to figure out which key.
They get into the store, and this is, where the fun really begins. That's where Romero starts playing. Not only is he playing with the zombies as consumers, but I love the scene where Roger and Peter are running through the mall, and Roger almost runs into a mannequin that's just looking at him impassively, and he starts like it's a zombie. So then they decide to do the old okey doke. So they go to one floor, they attract all the zombies, so they all come to the one floor, and they go to the other floor to get their cart full of stuff. But in the meantime, good old flyboy Steven has woken up. He's taken Fran's gun from her, and he's gone down to try to help. I don't know what he is actually thinking that he can do that these 2 guys can't do, but he goes to try to rescue them or something.
He feels left out.
But he does feel left out, and he wants to prove himself. That's the endearing thing about this character. He's like he's very hangdoggish, and he's like that kid that never gets picked in gym class. He needs to prove himself.
So we can all relate to him. Is that what you're implying?
You may take it for what you will. So,
I know.
so he has his little altercation with the zombie in the power room, and this is a creepy scene as well, because not only are you yelling at Steven for shooting into it keeps ricocheting around, but you have that really echoey organ type music, and you really get a sense of his dire situation here, that he is way over his head, that he's only been able to get, and who keeps a gun in a desk drawer in like an admin office in the back mall?
Again, it's sketchy back there. Who knows what you're going to encounter?
The only thing he does that's really smart is he gets the map.
Yes, and that actually that gives him some cachet with the 2 SWAT guys.
Correct.
Once he finds
takes that
the
whole
map.
book. Yep.
So they're in JCPenney. They're still playing the old okey doke, right? And they hear the gunshots from Steven's gun, and they don't know what it is. And then Peter says, "Well, if it's Flyboy, let's get him on our side so he doesn't shoot at us again." So they do. And Steven, long story short, they get Steven into JCPenney, and he shows them what he's found, that binder of all the ductwork above the stores. And they realize that they can use this to get around while there's still zombies in the mall. So now Steven is so full of himself. He's so proud that he joins them on the okey doke and is banging on, and he's woohooing, and he's banging on the glass. And then there's a great celebration. Oh, it's boys' night out. But then you cut to Fran, who is about to be terrorized by a Hare Krishna zombie that's making his way.
Once again, they got such a bad rap in the late 70s.
But Fran is really the voice of reason now. Galen Ross is the actress that portrays Fran. And on some of the test screenings, she read that a lot of the audience did not like her character because she was always interrupting the fun that the guys were having. Now, these are probably...
She's a killjoy.
I am sure that these were not any polls that were given to women exiting the theater. It was probably all men. But the audience does warm up to her, because as she sat through a couple of screenings herself, and she sensed that the audience was warming to her the more that she joined with them and joined in on the fun. But she has the most rational frame of mind. She is right from the beginning that the mall is their downfall, kills Roger, kills Steven, and they don't survive it at the end. Well, she does, but 2 of them don't.
The big problem with Fran is that in the first hour, literally the first hour, she's basically helpless.
Doesn't do anything.
Like, she doesn't do anything. She's a very passive character. Like when they're in the airport, she doesn't even run or scream when she sees the zombies. Now, that was a deliberate choice on her part because she didn't want to be the screaming horror girl. But she's it's very frustrating to watch her in the first hour because she doesn't take any action. She doesn't take any agency. And you start to get this feeling at first that she's going to be a lot like Judith O'Dea's character in Night of the Living Dead, a person who just has a breakdown and becomes catatonic.
Lays on the couch for the next hour and a half.
But I mean, it's nice in the second hour, you see her trying to regain some more control, but she's still not as much of a participant that I would like her to be. Because a lot of times they're like, well, you're pregnant, so you just stay right here.
Right.
Yeah.
And
have a drink have a drink while you're at it.
She did mention on the commentary that Alien had come out the same year at that Dawn of the Dead, and she said if she had seen that, because she said that Ripley, the character of Ripley, really inspired her when she did see Alien, and if she had seen that before, she would have felt more emboldened to push with George that her character needed to be more involved. But I don't know if it didn't occur to her or she didn't feel like that was her place or whatever. But, as you said, she did fight for that one scene that she was not going to run away from the airport zombie. And she's helpless when that Hare Krishna zombie comes up and threatens her. And even though it's almost like the Baby Yoda of zombies, this Hare Krishna guy.
He looks so cute.
And so, of course, they come back in at the very right moment. She's trying to climb up the ladder. She can't even climb up the ladder because she's got the flare in her mouth. And Steven is about to blow it again. He's about to shoot the thing in the head, and she's right on the other side of it as well. And they grab his gun. They're like, nope, you're going to leave him right up here. And as Fran is reeling from this encounter, she didn't even want to be here in the first place. They're talking about holing up for a while in the mall, that this is a good thing that they've got going here, and they shouldn't be in such a rush to leave. This could be their home for however long. The next scene is them thinking about cordoning off the mall, making it safe for them to move about. So they have a plan. There's 4 entrances, and having been to the Monroeville Mall, there are a lot more than 4 entrances to that mall. Like any mall has a lot more than 4 entrances. But for the purpose of this movie, there's only 4 entrances that they have to cover with trucks. And Peter and Roger are going to do that with Steven keeping an eye out above them. So in the movie, right over the hill, there's a trucking company with a few like big semi like Mack type trucks that Roger is able to hotwire, and they're going to block the entrances with these. So I think it's the second, and Roger is sort of losing his mind as these are going, because he's getting in this frenetic frame of mind as he's running down zombies, because he's attacked as he's hotwiring one of the vehicles. This girl, I think she had another job on the movie, actually. She had very Farrah Fawcett type hair. She had feathered hair, this zombie. And she gets into the cab and she's on top of Roger. And as I was watching the cast commentary, Galen Ross remembers seeing this girl on set, thinking that if I ever have a bad day, they're going to replace me with her because she is so pretty. This girl. So she was living in fear of this woman every day on set. But Roger is attacked because he's kind of like Steven in the scene before when Steven finds the ductwork. He's really having a great time.
He's killing him, man. He was rocking.
And so when the zombies attack him, he's not bitten at that point. But you can tell that he's off once Peter comes and rescues him and shoots the zombies, that something is off now with Roger, and he's not fully there. Especially he's got the blood on his face. He puts on the windshield wiper and he's wiping the blood off of the windscreen, which I guess maybe we all would do if we were in that same situation. But I think it's the second of the trucks is where the problem happens. The second truck that they move. Roger jumps out, gets into Peter's truck, and they're about to go get the third when Roger realizes he forgot his bag. And apparently that bag has the tools that he was using to jumpstart the trucks, because he needs to go back and get it. Now, Peter, and this is another sobering scene. Like, you're having fun, and then boom, here's another sobering scene where Peter grabs him and saying, "Are you straight? Because this is my life now, and not just yours that you're messing with. If we have to go back and get that bag." And he says, "Yes, I'm straight." He goes back, gets in the truck, and there's all these little scenes. If you kind of know what's coming, Romero teases you with all these zombies that are close to biting him, but don't actually bite him. And then finally, he gets bitten on the arm when he drops the bag, and he has to go down to the ground to get it in between the trucks. And then when he jumps back into the cab, he gets bitten seriously on the leg. And anybody that's watched Night of the Living Dead or anything like that knows that he has sealed his fate with those two zombies have sealed his fate, that he is done. From that point on, I think I would like to know how they got the other two trucks actually from that point on in front of the other two entrances.
Yeah.
But we realize, and Peter says when he gets Roger back to the mall, that he's seen other soldiers that have been bitten, and that none of them have lasted more than 3 days. And from that point on, we see Roger bandaged.
Yeah.
And whenever they have to go, like, do something in the mall, he's like in a wheelbarrow. He's an Indian.
I actually love that.
So once the trucks are in the position on the outside of the mall, then they have to clean out the inside of the mall. And they have to lock the inner doors where they've blocked the trucks. So they use one of the display cars in the mall to do it. And this is one of the most, I think, wince-worthy scenes in terms of the gore. Roger has to climb in the back of the Scirocco. And my father used to have a Scirocco. So whenever I think that also ties to my childhood. And he's struggling with his bandaged arm and his bandaged leg. And a zombie sneaks up and puts her fingers
into the wound.
And then it erupts with his blood. Now, this is a good opportunity to point out the color of the blood and of the zombies, actually, because I don't think in any movie before or since do the zombies have that bluish gray.
Look like angry Smurfs.
That they have in this.
Yeah.
But still, I don't think it takes away from the effectiveness. I'm often disappointed that you never see zombies like this in anything else. That, like, to me, that's the definitive look of a zombie, is what they look like in Dawn of the Dead.
Well, Savini said they were supposed to be gray.
Yeah.
But the color on some of them just got picked up in a weird way.
Yeah.
Some of them looked more blue. He said some of them looked more green, but they were supposed to be gray. That was the intention.
I think that maybe the closest to what he was trying to get at was when Roger turns, because his
you're right.
tone is a lot different than
like
any of the
chalky
others.
almost,
yes.
And that's almost like what you would refer to as like a hero makeup. In other words, like he took a lot more time on that particular effect, because he talked about how they layered the latex and they dried it out so that it would look aged, and they did all this kind of stuff. But obviously you don't have that kind of time for most of the zombies, where you're just basically slapping the makeup on someone's
all right, go buy somebody, go.
I know, like an assembly line, right? Because you got 200 extras and you've only got like 8 makeup people, so it's like boom, boom. They do end up successfully locking down the inside of the mall. Then they clean it by using these flatbeds and picking up all the zombie bodies and putting them in a freezer somewhere. I don't know if you'd want to do that. It looked like there was food in that freezer.
Maybe that was the Orange Julius.
Yeah. Maybe bring them in the bank vault or something. I think you need the food more than you need the dollar bills. So at this point, after they've cleaned up, the mall is theirs for the taking. They can walk unencumbered throughout the mall. Is where you get some of that montage where you see them enjoying the fruits of their labor, where, Roger's in his wheelbarrow, he's trying on hats in JCPenney, and that's where the scene where they're in Hickory Farms, and Peter, they're weighing coffee and stuff like that, and they're playing basketball in JCPenney's. So in this montage, because you know that Roger only has 3 days to live, it makes it seem like they're in the mall much longer than they are, because you realize the brain tricks you thinking, they're in there for months at this point, but it's only been a couple of days. It's like the next day after they clean up.
They just get a lot done in that time frame. I would have gone right to the Brown Derby, though, the steakery.
Yeah, that had some key camera angles. That a lot of the stuff that was going on has Brown Derby in the background. Right. I think because it's right on that corner where that alleyway is. So whenever they run out of the alleyway,
it's right there.
No, it was Foxmore's that was on the corner of the alleyway. But I digress. So,
but they are in there for longer than you think, because Fran is noticeably pregnant at the end of the movie, where she's not showing at the beginning.
Once Roger is gone, then
that's
when the time really starts.
It kind of jumps.
Because then you see them marking off days on the calendar and what have you. But yes, so we get the one scene where they're back in the apartment and Roger is on his last legs. It's very like a tender moment, and the cast were making fun of this moment because they're saying that there's much more emotion between these two guys than there are between Flyboy and Fran. Like Flyboy and Fran can't even talk to each other. They're in bed next to each other and they're silent. Meanwhile, there's this really emotional scene between Peter and Roger.
Bro code, man.
And Roger's telling him, and this is so heartbreaking. I'm like, I'm going to try not to come back. I'm going to try not to. It's like, you do not shoot me until you know I'm coming back, because I'm going to try. Fortunately, it doesn't work. No. He's not able to fend it off. And
you can't will that stuff, I guess.
Yeah. In a very nice decision, they do not actually show it, the headshot. You just hear it from the other room.
But very nice tie-in, because at the exact same time, there's another one of these commentaries on the TV, and the person on the TV is saying, you know, that you need to get rid of the bodies, and he's saying you need to be unemotional, rational, logical, and like as he's saying that, you're hearing the bullet.
Right. And again, that's another scene where you can hear the camera crew just berating this guy who is logical himself, who is going through, we cannot think of these as humans or cannibals,
right?
Because they are not human. They do not feed on each other. They only feed on, and then he suggests, and this is an idea that Romero picks up a little bit later on in the series, that in order to contain the problem, that humanity feeds the zombies, and the crew just erupts on this guy, that he is ridiculous. And the host says, you scientists all think the same. You have no emotion. That's not how the world works. And it's like, you're just shaking, especially now, you're shaking your fist at the screen. But
fake news.
It's just funny how well it speaks to today, is when you watch this now. But yes, we see Roger is buried in one of the gardens on the first floor of this mall. And then again, there's a montage, and this is where we see the days being marked off, where Peter's no longer wearing his SWAT outfit. He's like, he's in all of his finery from JCPenney. He's got the huge collar,
high-end corner,
the 70s collars. He's got like all the rings from that department on. He's got his workout clothes when he's hitting the tennis balls against the wall on the roof. And I love that scene when he's practicing, and then he just sweeps all of his gear, and one of the tennis balls rolls off, because it's the end of a montage where you see Fran, that this is where she was pregnant in the mirror, modeling the clothes. You forget about the zombies for a second, because you're just watching these characters live their life in the mall. And then Peter, at the end of the montage, is playing this tennis, the ball rolls over, and then you're reminded of them viscerally.
There they are. Oh yeah, there they are.
Boom, and then the ball slowly bounces across the parking lot, and you see how many are still assembled out there because they want to get in the mall, because they remember that this is some place that they want to be. Another nice little line of dialogue from Romero. This place was important in their lives, which sounds ridiculous, but it's true. It's true. It's like muscle memory.
Consumerism.
There.
I got a card.
Fast forward a little bit, and the three of them are well ensconced in their life in the mall. Flyboy, Steven, I want to call him Flyboy before I call him Steven, tries to propose to Fran with wedding rings, and she turns him down. So this guy cannot win. I think that his only victory in the movie was when he found that binder, because he is...
it's all downhill.
Well, that's the thing. He is such a liability in the next sequence. So the biker gang finds out they're in there, and they decide to break into the mall. And he's the one who actually starts the war with the biker gang, because Peter's like, they don't even know we're here. They just want some stuff. Let them come in. Let them take
let them go. Yep.
And we'll just hide out, and it won't be a big deal. So Steven actually starts the war with the biker gang, and then later he's the one who leads the zombies to their hiding place. Like, he's so useless. If it wasn't for the fact that he taught Fran how to fly the helicopter, he would be irredeemable. But he is the actor. David Emke, he's the best zombie in the film.
He is the ultimate zombie.
Yeah.
He is the litmus test. He is where people that are playing zombies should look to him for inspiration.
He has zombie classes now.
His zombie is incredible. Like he's just transformed. He has like this amazing walk, this amazing sort of like the way he holds his body,
Right.
just
Yeah. I agree. The makeup when you watch him in that scene is almost an afterthought. He doesn't need it. It's almost like, and you don't roll your eyes for the Bowie reference, is when Bowie played the Elephant Man on stage and he did everything sans makeup. He just was manipulating his body. And that's what David Emge is doing here. And every commentary that I watched, whoever was talking stopped whenever that scene came up, and they're just like, look at this, look how good. I don't know how he did that with his ankle. He's walking on his ankle in this scene.
Yeah, that's oof.
As Christina just said, this motorcycle gang is looking at the mall. They see Steven teaching Fran how to fly the helicopter. And now that, if anything seals this guy's death, is that when Fran says, if anything happens to you, I want to learn how to fly that helicopter to get us out of here. And he's extremely angry about this because he's been shown up now in front of his two new best friends. But eventually he comes around, he shows her how to fly the helicopter. And as he's doing that, the motorcycle gang sees the helicopter on the roof. There's the little scene where they communicate via the CB radios, where they try to fool them into thinking there's only 3 of them. And then, Peter's not having that. He's just like, just listen, don't say anything. And then the motorcycle gang comes down that access road that's right by the mall. And we get into the end of the movie. Now, another one of these things that Romero puts in, I'm talking about, just breathing room for the audience or information for the audience. At the end of that scene where the motorcycle gang are talking to them on the CB radio, and Tom Savini is playing one of the motorcycle raiders, he says to the other guy, should we hit him now or should we hit him tonight? And then the guy says tonight. And then Savini takes out a switchblade and he hits it, and it's a comb to comb his mustache. And you hear a voice, oh, it's a comb. As if Romero is trying to plant that so you think that it's an audience. If you're sitting in the theater and you heard that, you think it's an audience. Why would a motorcycle guy say, oh, that's a comb? So, it's kind of Romero helping you along to laugh. Like if you didn't realize that was a comb, somebody just told you that's a comb.
That's
a comb. It's a comb. That's funny.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Now prepare yourself.
So yes, we get into the end, the end times for our group here. Now it's a trio. As Christina said, the plan was just for Peter and Steven to go into the mall, close the gates, and not make it easy for them. Because there's going to be a million zombies in here. They're going to have their hands full. They're not going to worry about us. But Steven is angered by what he sees. These motorcycle guys, how dare they? How dare they take what we stole? It's ours. We took it. It's ours. And so he starts shooting. And then they realize that there's somebody up there shooting at them. And then Peter has to step in, and now they're all shooting at each other. Some of the most slapsticky moments are in this climax. And I'm specifically talking about the pie fight, which is
was out of left field.
So was Fran making pies? Is that how she had just
Apparently.
like pies like in one of those baking shops, and they were just sitting there waiting to be used?
I think there's a Pies R Us on the corner.
Yeah, Pies R Us. But it is funny, it is just like a throwaway scene. And you could tell that, not that they really say in the commentaries, but probably it's something that came up on the day. Like, oh, why don't we just throw pies in their face?
I was watching some Three Stooges the other day. That would be funny.
And Savini actually has a seltzer bottle, and he's like spraying them in the face after he hits them with the pies. But
a little eye poke.
Yep. And earlier in the movie, after they've cleaned out the mall of zombies, what they do is down that hallway that has the entranceway to their apartment, they had put a fake wall up there and painted it to match the other paint that was already there. So anybody that came in, like these bikers, would not know that they were up there. It was just look like a wall.
Dead end. Yeah.
And it worked for the bikers anyway, because Tom Savini goes down that hallway after Peter, who climbs up the ladder. He pulls the ladder up and he puts the grate back down. And Tom Savini like shoves the sword up there, and he looks around like as to see where he can go after him, and he doesn't see anything. So he goes back down the hallway again. So it worked in one respect. And then as the bikers are pillaging the mall and they're on their way out, there's one scene I love where they're in JCPenney and you see him grabbing this, you see him grabbing that. The one guy grabs a TV and says, "What are you going to watch on that?" And he says, "Yeah, you're right," and he throws it down. But one biker grabs a shirt and tie and throws it back. He's like, did you catch that? Like one guy grabs this, one guy grabs that, one guy grabs a shirt and tie, considers it, and then he throws it back onto the back. Then the one guy who is obsessed with getting his blood pressure taken, who has also taken a mannequin, because he's grabbed a mannequin from JCPenney and he's running with that, and he stops to check his blood pressure. And one of the other guys that was riding in the sidecar with him said, "There's people shooting at us. What are you doing? You get out of there." He's kind of stuck there with his arm in the cuff, and then the zombies get him. Tom Savini dies because Peter shoots him from one of the greats. You get that audience satisfaction by seeing the head biker go down. As an audience member, you're kind of feeling where Steven is coming from, because I was upset watching them pillage all this stuff. They've got it clean and perfect and everything else, and they come in no respect. They just blow the doors open. Yeah, we did all this work for nothing. We've been living here for months, and now you ruin it all. This is why we can't have nice things in the apocalypse, because of you motorcycle gangs. Yeah. But this is the end. The motorcycle gang is retreating. Steven, after he's caused all this chaos, he retreats back into JCPenney because he's got no recourse. He goes into the elevator so he can get into the shaft. He climbs up there, but two of the motorcycle guys see that the door's open. He's left the elevator door open to stop the elevator so he could climb up there. And they shoot at him from the elevator. And it's one of the better effects as well. And he sells it really good when they shoot him in the arm. And you see that blood splatter, and he just starts shivering there. You can imagine that that's how you would react if you just get shot in the arm like that. So even though we're dumping on his character, I think David MG does a great job.
Oh yeah, he does.
Steven.
Yeah. He's a really good actor. Like, this is no slam against him as a performer, because he's excellent throughout. It's just his character is kind of annoying.
Well played.
So this is where we get his bravo zombie performance, because he falls into the elevator, and unfortunately, one of the zombies that are gathering there outside the elevator doors hits the button, the doors open, and it's one of the more iconic scenes from the zombies all lurch into the elevator into camera, grabs Steven, gets a couple of bites. He manages to fight them off somehow to get him out of the elevator. The doors closes again. And a few minutes later, he doesn't last as long as Roger does. No. Unfortunately, he's bitten too many times. The doors open and boom, he is, and talk about the hero makeup. This is one of the more memorable makeup jobs of the film, because he's got the hole in his neck. His head is hunched over so it can really showcase that hole in his neck. And then as he leaves the elevator, he's stumbling around, walking on his ankle somehow, and he's got the gun twirling on his finger. It's meaningless at this point, and he just can't get it off of his finger. So it's there. So as the mall clears out with the motorcycle gang, the zombies are coming back in, and they see that the Steven zombie is going in a certain direction. So all these other zombies start to follow him, leads him right down the hall, just as he was going to do earlier in the movie, and Peter told him not to. He leads him right down the hall. He goes right to that fake wall and starts clawing on it. Yeah. And the other zombies help him out, and they break it down. And so the very last scene is Fran and Peter in the apartment. Peter is getting Fran out, and he doesn't want to go with her. He wants to end it there. And it's very deliberate. He's taking the rings off. He's taking all these crutches that he's had since living in the mall, and he's stripping himself of all these things. And now he's just back in his SWAT team outfit. And he realizes that he's been corrupted. He doesn't want to go on. He's like, this, if this is what this world has for me, then this is it. So the zombies start coming into the room, and he's there with the little pistol to his temple, and he's about to end it. And then suddenly, boom, the hero music comes on. You see Fran start to lift off in the helicopter, and he starts going Bruce Lee on all the zombies that are accumulating in the apartment. So, and he makes it up the ladder, and some of the zombies do too. So they have climbing abilities in this. You don't usually see that. They don't usually have that much coordination in order to climb up a ladder, especially a ladder like that one. Peter makes it to the roof, gets in the helicopter because Fran sees him. Famous last words. How much fuel do we have? Not much.
Not much.
He's like, okay. And then they go. And then that's it. And then cut to credits.
Wow.
See, I'm getting tingles just talking about
Now, do we see these characters again?
No. Unfortunately, no. And let's talk about the ending that could have been. Romero originally wrote a downer ending to stay kind of thematically in line with Night of the Living Dead.
Right. Which is very much a downer ending for a movie. That's very depressing.
So what was going to happen was Peter was going to shoot himself in the apartment. And then Fran, I can only imagine how they would have pulled this off, but Fran was going to stand outside of the helicopter and stand up into the blades as they were going. Not only that, but the credits would close on the helicopter blades slowing to a stop. So even if they had gone, they only had like 2 minutes worth of fuel left in the helicopter.
Interesting.
But Romero said that he liked the characters too much to do that to them.
That's interesting, though, that sometimes the characters take on a life of their own. And I can't kill you now. I like you too much.
I can't imagine. I don't know if I'm sure I still would love the movie if that's how it ended. But I don't know if I'd love it as much as I do the way it exists.
Well, it does end
now.
on hope, so.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
It is interesting, though, how sometimes these decisions get made. There's this scene earlier in the mall where they're trying to clear the mall of the zombies, and there's the nun who gets her habit stuck in the door. And Fran, I guess, originally was supposed to shoot the nun. And instead, you actually see her open the door and sort of gently let the nun out. And the actress said that, George came over to her and said, "You can't shoot a nun."
Yeah, because he's Catholic, right?
Yeah.
He's very Catholic.
Like they just couldn't do that.
Kids, fine.
Yeah,
Kids,
sure. Yep.
all day long.
Bikers,
kids.
hell yeah. Nuns, no. What about the nurse, though? What was she doing in the mall, anyways?
Maybe she's taking blood. Who knows? Maybe
she was fixing the blood pressure machine.
Yeah.
And then the interviews in one of the documentaries, the actress who played the zombie nurse said that people come up to her conventions. "I've been waiting for years to meet you."
Oh, really?
Like,
yeah.
Yes.
I was one of those people.
She was there. I mean, she was very iconic. She was there.
I met her. She's married. She's married to the escalator zombie.
Did they meet on set?
They met on.
That
no,
is
actually, I don't think they did. They knew each other beforehand.
That is
so, and they
awesome.
were sitting at a table. Because I've been to the Monroeville Mall twice on two.
I want to go to this mall now.
It's about a 6-hour drive from here.
Now I don't want to go.
So you got to be dedicated to.
That is.
So, but there is a hotel right next door, so we stayed at the hotel that night. But they had a zombie walk. They don't do it anymore because I guess they had some damage the last time it was done.
See, once again, you can't have anything.
Can't have nice things. But they had a zombie walk at the Monroeville Mall, and they had it for 2 or 3 years in a row. And we went in 2006 or 7. I'm not sure what the year was. But we dressed up as zombies. We walked through the mall. The night before we came, before they were having these festivities, and we walked all around to all the haunts. We went through JCPenney. I had to see the escalator at JCPenney, first of all. They do have those pegs now. So you
you can't just slide. No.
Cannot slide. Woo. Even if you wanted to and be arrested after you did, you can't. Because it's physically impossible to do.
You're going to be in traction.
I had to see the elevator. So when we went in the elevator, I had to stand up there and open that door, even though they didn't shoot the scenes inside the shaft. I still had to do it and take a picture. Stood outside where the doors were still the same. Those sliding glass doors. So the locks were the same, the doors were the same, and everything. We went down the hallway where the phone booth and the photo booth was, and they had. When we went, they had, I guess they had a Monroeville Mall newspaper, just a little, promotional newspaper that would come out every season. And they had old issues of this framed as you go down. And there was one for Halloween that mentioned zombies. And there was another one for Star Wars weekend. And it had like Star Wars figures on sale. It was 83 around the time of Jedi's release. So I thought that was cool. And we went to the door, the access hallway, a bunch of warning signs there. And there was nobody else in the hallway. And I was there with my brother. I didn't have the guts to go in there.
You didn't want to be arrested?
Because I didn't want to be kicked out of the mall as soon as I got there. I just drove 6 hours to be here. But my brother grabbed my camera and he went in the hallway. And he was in there for a good 10 minutes. And he was walking, and only a few of the pictures came out because it was so dark. But he saw that power room. So he went in there. And I think he said he saw a stairway that looked very much like the one in the movie. So I think the stairway was in the mall, but the room itself is not in the mall. But he didn't see anybody. There was nobody back there when he went. And I'm just sitting there biting my nails, waiting for him to come out.
That's like in Candyman where the two girls go into the projects.
Right. But yeah, he said it was all still there. It looked just like in the movie.
Huh, that's wild.
And it's funny how filmmakers can kind of skew your perspective from reality. Because in the scene where Peter gives his famous line is, when there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth. And they've all got their fur coats on from JCPenney, and they're looking down on the mall from the front of JCPenney, and they're all stood on the railing. And you're thinking from the camera shot, there's a camera shot with their point of view that goes down the length of the mall. JCPenney is not situated on the end of the mall. Across from the real JCPenney is the other balcony with stores there. So it's in the middle of the mall, right? And the entrances are right there.
It's like
it's
an
not
anchor store,
on an end cap. So that was like a phony shot. And right across from it now, where the ice rink was on the lower level, is a food court. So the ice rink was right across from JCPenney.
What I want to know is Roger still buried in the...
I didn't see his grave, no. But they still do have that goldfish koi pond, whatever.
Oh, really?
They still had that with a little bridge. That was still there.
That's funny.
I took a photo on that. Clock tower, gone. Clock tower is gone. But there is, in its place, a little Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood play area for kids, because that's also Pittsburgh legend, Fred Rogers. So there's a little tribute to him there as well.
Very cool.
Yeah. A great experience to watch this again. Love this movie. Listening to some of the commentaries, the most fun one was the cast. And they are ripping Steven throughout this whole movie, just like we were.
Just like we are.
Just like we were.
Like this guy.
And he is I think he's getting defensive. Like, he takes it pretty well for the first hour or so. But he starts getting really mad towards the end.
Yeah, enough, guys. Enough.
Standing up for his character.
That's funny.
One of the more funny things is that Peter and Roger, the two actors, Ken Foray and Scott Reiniger, used to drive in together into work from the hotel. Ken was always late, so Scott would always be there waiting for him. And Ken would just saunter from the hotel. They'd get in the car. A big song at the time was Randy Newman's Short People. So he would always because there was such a size difference between the two of them, he would always sing Short People to him in the car, which I thought was hilarious.
Get it out of the way.
When the commentary starts, Galen Ross, who plays Fran, says, "I'm sorry, I forgot my pots and pans," just like she does in the movie. So I thought that was fun as well. Background, as I mentioned before, they had trouble with the ratings board when this was trying to be released. Warner was interested in this, but only if they cut it to an R rating. And Richard Rubenstein, who is George's partner and the producer of this movie, who was George's partner at the time, stood his ground with George, said that they would not compromise the movie because it wouldn't be the same. And it wouldn't if they had to take all that stuff out, because they were thinking long term, like, this is we have like a cult hit on our hands, and it's not going to mean anything if we cut it to make an R rating. It's just going to be another R-rated horror movie. So they stuck to their guns. They ended up with United Film Distribution, who agreed to release it without a rating because the ratings board was going to put an X on it.
Oof,
and
Kiss of Death, huh?
which is the Kiss of Death. When you hear X, you think a porno movie.
Yeah, then I want to see naked zombies.
Yeah.
But they still had trouble because with no rating, they couldn't.
Yeah, correct.
They couldn't run TV ads at all, even during like prime time, and they couldn't. Like, there was limited places even where they could place ads in newspapers. So they were really reliant on word of mouth to get this movie going.
Wow.
And that's what happened, really. Mm-hmm. That's what happened. As Christina mentioned, Dario Argento put up some money to get this made because he was such a fan of Night of the Living Dead. And already he was a director in his own right, so he had the money to put up. He had done Deep Red at that point. He had done Suspiria, I think, had come out already. Yeah, 77 that came out.
Yep.
So he had some money, and he contacted George, who was just percolating this Monroeville Mall idea in his head. So it was almost like kismet. It was perfect timing. The deal was that if Argento put up the money, that he would have the rights to release it in Europe, and he would have final cut for the European version, which is why it's so different, because to Argento's mind, the European sensibility wouldn't really understand the humor and the social reference, a lot of it that Romero put in. So that was taken out, and the concentration was more on the effects and the gore, and some of the gore that Romero took out himself from the US version. So the European version, while missing a lot of that character development, it's heavier on the violence. So it is a completely different viewing experience. It's not like watching the same movie, because you lose a lot of background for the characters, for their motivations. But it was a huge hit in Italy. First, I think it was released in September of 78, and it didn't come out in the US until April of 79 because of the issues with the distributors. And they finally found this one place, United Film Distribution, and word of mouth, once it got released. The scary summer of 79, we talked about it. Phantasm, right? And then Alien.
Alien.
They were all out at the same time. A lot of the stuff that I saw in researching, the newspaper ads had it on triple, double bills with either Phantasm or Alien in a lot of theaters. So, yeah, Dawn of the Dead, classic film. Now, this was remade, as we've mentioned before.
Alluded to.
I didn't think you'd even mention this.
I just want to mention it because it offends me so. When people say they prefer, I remember walking out of the theater and somebody saying, I like this better than the first one. The first one was kind of boring. I didn't even know how to react to that statement. But the main difference is that these zombies run as if they were not threatening enough as shuffling dead zombies, that you have to have them run as well and have their full strength, their full capacity to hurt you.
What's scarier?
Well, this is, I mentioned this in another, I think when we were talking about Alive, and I said that the first time I'd seen what we think of as a fast zombie is in 28 Days Later, but they make a clear distinction that they are infected.
And
that
they are not zombies. Yes.
They're not zombies. They're dead. Functionally, for the purposes of the story, yes, they act like zombies, but they're infected. And it was very clear when Dawn of the Dead came out that Zack Snyder had been influenced almost as much by 28 Days Later.
Yeah.
Because that was not something that really existed before that movie.
Right. And it was like a weird bastardization of the Romero zombie and 28 Days Later. And again, Romero himself commented, because the funny thing is that Richard Rubinstein was the producer of the remake. And he was kind of talking it up on his commentary because it hadn't been made yet. They already had he mentioned Zack Snyder as a first-time director. And he was just saying how he was looking forward to them making the remake. But Romero himself, when this came out, he just was not down with the idea of running zombies. Like just the physicality of somebody dead. He's like, you've got rigor mortis. You cannot move like in that way like you used to. And plus the fact that if you've got 1,000 running zombies at their full strength, a few locked glass doors is not going to stop them.
Not going to stop them. No.
Yeah, they're going to get you wherever you are. So that whole suspense aspect of it is just taken right out. Yeah, that's all I want to say about about the remake. Some fun facts. You mentioned that Brown Derby, Jeff. That zombies would often go to the Brown Derby because that was one of the few things that was open late in that mall, and often was open for the first few hours of the shooting day. When I say day, they shot at night, but it was often open until I think midnight. So a lot of zombies, once they had their makeup on, waiting for their call, would go and get drunk at the Brown Derby.
Nice, because it was the Love Pub, right? Yeah, Brown Derby Steakery Love Pub.
And apparently 2 of these drunken zombies commandeered a golf cart that was used by George Romero to get around the mall and crashed it into one of the pillars. And that was what really the only damage, besides the tire marks that the motorcycles left, that the production team had to fix.
They did less damage than the zombie walk.
They probably did. Yeah.
Yikes.
And we're talking about the blue Smurfy zombies in this movie.
Yep.
Savini also, on his commentary, complained about the blood color because he bought the blood in bulk from the 3M company, the same place that sells the paper products and stuff like that. So for some reason, they were selling fake blood. And when he got it, it was not like realistic. It was like red crayons melted down. And when George saw it, he was over the moon about it because he's like, well, this is kind of more in what makes it even more comic booky. So he thinks that blood color adds to the movie rather than detracts it. But Savini, you could tell, is bothered by it to this day. But yeah, Dawn of the Dead. I could go on forever about this, but I'm gonna end it right there.
So are we going to officially induct this?
Should we yet? Do we want to talk about the Janet Maslin piece?
Oh my gosh.
There you go. Sorry, I forgot about her already.
Yeah, I have it right here because I actually was laughing when I was reading the article. Because like I said, there is some quite good writing in this. But she's very contemptuous of the film that she did not sit through.
Yeah.
So I won't read the whole thing, but just the first paragraph. Some people hate musicals and some dislike westerns, and I have a pet peeve about flesh-eating zombies who never stop snacking. Accordingly, I was able to sit through only the first 15 minutes of Dawn of the Dead, George Romero's follow-up to Night of the Living Dead, which Mr. Romero directed in black and white in 1968. Since then, he has discovered color. Perhaps horror movie buffs will consider this an improvement. The shade she's throwing from...
Right. And she mentions a little later on in there how, I guess, from the lobby she could hear the audience
moaning and groaning
as if they were not enjoying themselves.
Yeah.
Right.
And she said, Mr. Romero is an acknowledged dean of this sort of thing, and he has been assisted this time by another red meat magnate, Dario Argento. Mr. Argento, who most recently directed the less stomach-turning Suspiria, has provided a lot of thumpity-thump music for the soundtrack. Unlimited evidence, though, Dawn of the Dead didn't seem like anything that would send an audience home humming its theme song. Which is funny, because if you watch this at night, which for this viewing I did, I went to bed with that carnival music at the end stuck in my head.
It reminded me of Police Academy thing.
That's because we didn't talk about the closing titles. That's one of the more haunting things about it, is just seeing the zombies again overrunning the mall and hearing that music in the background. And then the chiming of the clock at the very end, like your time is up, and then the movie's over when the clock finishes.
But it's, the thing that I find frustrating about this, same thing I find frustrating about anybody who reviews horror movies who don't like horror movies. Like, maybe you shouldn't be the one to review this movie, because if you're not going to sort of take it on its merits and look where it stands in sort of the pantheon of other horror movies, then maybe you shouldn't be the one reviewing this film. And it's fair if it's not your thing, because like I said, she says she walks out in the first 15 minutes. The first 15 minutes is some of the most intense stuff in the movie.
Yes, yeah.
So, she knew herself that she wasn't going to be able to sit through the rest of this film if she thought the rest of it was going to be like that first 15 minutes.
Right.
But, and I get it. I mean, I think everybody has like an ick line. I know I have. Yeah, like I know I have an ick line. It's sort of interesting. I can't watch cannibal movies, but I can watch zombie movies, because my ick line is like, I can't watch a human eating a human, but like a zombie is fine because the zombie is not a human anymore, right?
So they tell us.
So I think everybody has like that line where they're just like, well, I can't go any farther than this. And that's fine. One thing I wanted to mention tangentially, is not directly related to Dawn of the Dead, but I watched Night of the Living Dead again this week with my son, who'd never seen it. And a few days after we watched it, we watched Last Man on Earth, starring Vincent Price. And I don't know if it's been a long time since you've seen Last Man on Earth.
Yes. Yeah, it's a very long time.
But if you know anything about Romero, you know that he's mentioned that he was very inspired by the Richard Matheson story, I Am Legend, which Last Man on Earth is based on. But when you watch Last Man on Earth, especially within a few days of Night of the Living Dead, you realize that he also was strongly influenced by the way the vampires move in the Last Man on Earth. If you've watched it, the way they swarm the house, Vincent Price's character's house in that film, is exactly the same way they swarm in Night of the Living Dead. Like they move the same way, very stiff-legged. They have very sunken eyes. Their appearance is actually very, very much like the zombies in Night of the Living Dead. And I don't know if he's ever actively acknowledged that. Like I said, I know he's acknowledged the story.
The story.
But if you watch Last Man on Earth, like I said, within a few days of Night of the Living Dead, you're like, oh, hey, he must have been at least subconsciously influenced by the way that the zombies appear. Or they're not zombies in Last Man on Earth, they're vampires. But yeah, they look very much like the Night of the Living Dead zombies.
Box office wise, now the reported budget of Dawn of the Dead is 1.5 million, but on his commentary track, Rubenstein said that he inflated that so distributors would be more apt to pick them up.
We spent more money on it than
so
it
was
did.
not, and according to him, it was not 1.5. It was more like 700,000, which is unbelievable.
That is crazy.
And it made 66 million that year, so worldwide. So it's one of the most profitable films. At that point, it was, but I don't know if it still is, but it made quite a bit on its budget. So I would like to now finally induct Dawn of the Dead into the 5-bucket club. Sound that fanfare. There it is.
Beautiful.
All right. Well, thank you for putting up with me talking for
listen, we knew full well what we were getting into on this. This has been a long time coming.
Now, Jeff, this is your first viewing, so
I want to say that I have seen maybe not all of it. I do remember like when they got into the truck sequence, it was kind of like coming back to me. I know for a fact I've never seen the remake. So, but by and large, this was probably my first clear.
So, how did you like it compared to Night of the Living Dead, which we saw not too long ago?
They're two completely different movies to me.
Yes.
Again, I said Night of the Living Dead is scary. It's very taunt. It's much more character driven in the regard that you have a closed environment with just a handful of people. Even though, as we mentioned, that girl spends a fair amount of time passed out on the couch, and obviously that ending is just, it's heart-wrenching. So this is different. I enjoyed it. I liked it. Like I said, I came open-minded. I didn't think it was as gory as, other movies we've reviewed. But then again, I didn't see it when you saw it. I didn't, I'm looking at it as a 50-year-old man. Not a kid, and unfortunately, these movies have devolved greatly since then. So as cutting edge as it was in the time, it's very tame.
Yeah, but this is why I love zombies. Is this movie? This was what started it.
I completely understand that.
Yes. I saw this before Night, so this was my first taste of Romero. Even so.
Interesting.
So from that point on, I think I'm going to dig out my Goblin soundtrack wherever I have that now. And listen to it this week. So there.
There you go, kids. That's a full episode.
Yes.
We know going in with these 5 buckets that one of us is going to gush.
And this is wrapping up our Halloween.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
We went 5 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks.
What are we doing next week?
I think it's comedy week next week.
It's going to definitely be a little more lighthearted than what we've been dealing with. I think if we're talking about Love and Monsters, I think it's going to be definitely a little more lighthearted. A little cleansing of the palate after all this scary crap you people forced me to watch.
And what is our co-feature next week along with Love and Monsters?
Christina's choice.
Taika Waititi's, in my opinion, modern classic and very underseen and underrated compared to his other films, Hunt for the Wilder People.
Which I have never heard of until you mentioned it. And when I pulled up the poster for the graphics, I'm all in just based on the graphics. I had no clue Sam Neill's in this. You know, just the fact that Taika is attached. So I'm excited. So
thanks for hanging in there.
Yes.
All you Dawn of the Dead fans, please come back. If this is the first time you're listening, based on what we just talked about, please come back and listen again.
Yes, we like it when you listen to us.
Yeah. So,
somebody has to.
Somebody has to.
Right.
So thanks again.
Yep. Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a nice week. Okay. Hello, everybody. If you liked the podcast you just heard, then please follow TMI on all of our social media outlets. First and foremost, email us at tmipodcast2018@gmail.com. That is tmipodcast2018@gmail.com.
And you can follow us on Twitter at TMI_podcast2018. Stop over, say hi, give us a compliment. We'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Make sure you follow us on Instagram as well, which is also TMI_podcast2018.
And of course, we are on Facebook, facebook.com/TMI Podcast 2018. And it should be noted, we also have a community page, so join the forum.
And if you like to watch YouTube, you can see us at TMI Podcast 2018, all one word. Look for the popcorn bucket.
Popcorn bucket. Or you could just go to our website, which has every link there, TMIconfessionalspodcast.com. And we'll see you at the concession stand.
We'll save some popcorn for you.
Hickory Farms, remembers.
No.
That's Pepperidge Farms.
That was Pepperidge Farm. Whoop, 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 whoop.
Yep.